virtual database like replica that we will be using to pull all these titles from that replica type database, and then we are going to use an asynchronous function inside our server. Obviously, we will be creating the server by ourselves using Node's modules. We will be looking at new modules like the file system, as I was talking about in the previous videos. We will be looking at that, and another interesting part is that we will be looking at the JavaScript library, which is famously known as the JQuery library. We will look at how to integrate jQuery with our Node application. So I guess this will be a fun ride. But before you go any further, let me just show you one aspect of this page. Now, this page is constructed and handled and manipulated entirely by the server. If you click on this, you will see that this page. I'm running this page. This is the home page actually. So I'm running this on my Mozilla, and if you click on, and if you right click and then if you hover over to inspect element, then you'll see the HTML tags that's actually handling all this formatting for us. So I created this entire page. If you hover over any of the elements, then you will actually get the corresponding one highlighted on your left section. So if I hover over this header, I guess you can see that. If you hover over this header element, and if I click on it, then you'll see that I've got the title on my page. And then again, if I hover over this unordered list, inside this unordered list, there is a bunch of list elements that are responsible for styling and formatting all this data that's being pulled from the database type replica. So, or the JSON file, most appropriately. Now, the fact is that you won't actually have to create all this list. Our server, which we will be creating, our server will actually handle all this list. Our server will contain all the interaction. So we have pretty much a few objectives for us. The first objective will be to create the JSON file, as I was talking about. Then we will create an HTML page, which is known as HTML template in web programming. We will also create a server that will use asynchronous functions to pull data from the JSON file, and then it will put that data for the visitor on the HTML page. So I guess that will be interesting for us. The ride will be interesting. So let's get started. So I'm going to show you some interesting stuff before I proceed. So I created that for this tutorial. This entire page, this simple page, if you look at the code that I wrote, not the code at the browser, the code that I wrote is much simpler and smaller than the code that you can find if you inspect the element behind the scenes. So if I head back to my Aptena Studio, and this is the HTML page that I created for that website. Now, if you look carefully, I've got the header section, which is the featured blog, as you can see. But interestingly, you don't see any list in here. You just see some sort of handler. I would like to call this a handler, because this will be the essence of all the manipulation. So you just see something like div class. This is an element div, and we have assigned a class to this element. Now, if I head back to Firefox, you'll see this div class featured. But inside this div, on my browser, I see an unordered list with a class named as featured list, and that unordered list has a bunch of list elements that's actually listing all the titles, all the featured titles. But back in my actual HTML template or actual HTML page, I haven't got any sort of unordered list. I haven't got any sort of list elements. So where the hell are they coming from? So the fact is that that unordered list will be created by the jQuery library, and that will be integrated with our node server. If you're interested enough to learn about jQuery, then head over to jQuery.com. You'll find everything from download to CDN, and you'll also get examples. You'll also get the API documentation, and you'll also get, you'll also learn about the syntactical usage. So they have a pretty distinct way of using their syntaxes. Now jQuery has got this wrapper function, this $ followed by this parenthesis. Now, how did I understand that this is a function? Well, if you do not remember your JavaScript fundamentals or the JavaScript programming fundamental, then you should remember that every function call will have some sort of parenthesis. So in programming's perspective, alphabets, numbers, underscores, and $signs are all valid naming characters, which means you can use dollars, alphabets, numbers, and underscores to name your variables and also to name your functions. So the guys at the JavaScript core development team, those guys actually used this $sign for simplicity and for uniqueness, because many of the frameworks don't use this. So they want to avoid namespaces, or they want to avoid naming conventions inside namespaces. Like if you provide a name called wrapper, then another framework, another JavaScript framework, can also have the function name called wrapper. So they will have a conflict in namings. So what the guys at JavaScript's core development team did, they used this $sign to uniquely identify only JavaScript wrapper functions. Now JavaScript is pretty easy